Hello and welcome to Arts 24. Today, humanity is under the rubble. That's a quote from our guest, the award-winning Palestinian poet, Mosab Abu Toha, who escaped from Gaza a year ago. He lost his home in the bombings and countless relatives and friends have been killed. Now he's on a mission to tell the stories of the people left behind. Mosab Abu Toha, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Eve.
It's a pleasure to have you here. Now, over the past year, you have been documenting the situation in Gaza on social media, in publications such as the New York Times, the New Yorker, and, of course, through your poetry. You've lost a lot. Your parents are still in Gaza. I understand your sister is expecting a baby.
She did deliver the baby.
She did deliver the baby last week, and they're fine?
Yeah, they're fine. Alhamdulillah. Thank God.
The airstrikes continue. Tell us about the people back home at the moment.
I mean, it's very strange for me to be talking about stories that are still happening. It's, very traumatizing to be talking about things that not only happened in the past year, but also that continue to happen and be repeated at the hands of the Israeli forces who not only bombed my house October last year, but the tanks I hear from some of my friends who are still in northern Gaza tell me that the Israeli tanks have just passed by our house, which is already bombed. And we are talking today, it's November 19th, and it is the anniversary of my abduction by the Israeli forces. Not only did I lose 31 members of my extended family, including 3 first cousins, 2 of the 3 were killed with their husbands and their children. So two whole families of my relatives were killed. But also I lost so many of my students. I lost my house. I lost the libraries, the Edward Said Public Libraries that I founded in 2017 and 2019. And the thing is that I continue to lose things.
So, Mosab, tell us a bit more about that then. You said it's the anniversary of the day you were detained. In the New Yorker, you actually wrote about it last year. While you were trying to escape with your wife and 3 children, a year ago, you were detained by Israeli forces. You were beaten. You were interrogated. Really, it was thanks to international pressure because you're a high-profile poet that you were released. You've described the fear and helplessness in your poem, which is called On Your Knees.
Yeah.
How did poetry help you reclaim your agency?
Well, I mean, as a human being, I'm sharing my stories, but also the feeling that I feel when I live these stories and when I tell these stories. I'm not only sharing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things that happened to me, but also how I was feeling as these things were practiced on me. I mean, for example, when I was abducted, not only did I fear for my own life, but also I was so afraid about the lives of my children and wife who I was taken away from, and also my parents who I left behind in a school shelter. And I know that Israel was bombing these schools. And while I was being kept blindfolded and handcuffed, I could hear the Israeli artillery firing bombs on schools that I just left a few hours before I was abducted. So I could hear. I was just next to the machine that was firing bombs at my people. So I not only was not sure what was going to happen to me, but I also did not know the fate of my kids and wife, who themselves did not know where they were going, because we were going out together as a family. And one thing the Israeli soldier told me after they blindfolded and handcuffed me, they said, "You are a Hamas activist." I asked them if they have any proof. He slapped me across the face and he told me, "You give us proof." And then he said, "We took your wife and children," and he was lying. He said, "We took your children and wife at the other next checkpoint." So they were practicing all kinds of terrorism against me, someone who taught English at an UNRWA school, someone who founded 2 English language libraries, someone who toured the world and met people and explained, his life in the refugee camp, his life as a father, his survival and his attempts that continue to fail every time.
And you did escape, your family escaped, everyone is safe now, you're living in exile. in America. Just to remind people, your debut poetry collection was called Things You May Find Hidden in My Ear. That was from 2022. It won multiple awards. You're on tour now. This is why you're here in Paris with your latest work, which is called Forest of Noise. Now, that was written since the October 7th attacks and the war on Gaza. It opens with these words: every child in Gaza is me. Every mother and father is me. Every house is my heart. I wonder, would you do us the honor of reading a poem for us?
Yeah, as I'm opening the book, I wrote that half of the book was written after October 7, which means that the other half was written before October 7. And my first poetry book, which was translated into 6 languages, including the French, was written before October 7th. And this in itself tells us that what's been happening in Gaza has been going on for decades, not only for a few months. Because I'm really shocked that people start to talk about Gaza and Palestine as if they were born 14 months ago. It's called Right or Left, and it is about the sister of a friend of mine who was killed with his parents, with his 2 children, and 3 of his sisters. One of the sisters, including my friend, and also the father, are still buried under the rubble in the house where they were sheltering in Nusayrat since last November. Under the rubble, her body has remained for days and days. When the war ends, we try to remove the rubble, stone after stone. We only find one small bone from her body. It is a bone from her arm. Right or left, it does not matter as long as we cannot find the henna from her neighbor's wedding on her skin, or the ink from a school pen on a little index finger.
Thank you, Mosab. You mentioned, and you've written about it as well, an airstrike that killed 31 members of your uncle's family just in one day. This week you posted, I don't know how much we can take, how much a human heart can deal with. Tell us, does your poetry provide a way of coping, or is it a means of bearing witness?
Well, I mean, it is bearing witness. I mean, when I walk on the street and talk to people, I'm bearing witness, and I'm inviting people to bear witness with me. So I am a victim. My people are victims. And people outside of Gaza have never been able to come to Gaza. I met many people before October 7th, who asked me, how can we come to Gaza, Mosab? We want to come to Gaza and see it. But no one has been able to come to Gaza. So not only is Israel killing people in Gaza, not only are they occupying and besieging our homeland, but they are also preventing people from coming to see us, to witness what we are struggling with. And every day I post something, and sometimes I say, this will be my last post. I'm bored. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm telling stories in the hope that they will not happen again, but they keep happening. In my poem, in my long poem in the new book, there is a section called, my long poem is called Under the Rubble, and it is about some parents who were killed while they were trying to get some bread for their kids. And news of their death made it home, but not the bread. No bread, death sits to eat whoever remains of the kids. No need for a table, no need for bread. And I wrote that section in January this year. And last month, Israel bombed an UNRWA school in Al-Shati refugee camp, where I was born in 1992. And I saw in that video 2 parents killed in the street close to the hospital, close to the school shelter. And some loaves of bread were circling their bodies in pools of blood. So for me, the poem is not only a group of words. It is not something that people read, to feel, the beauty or the horror of a life, but it is something that keeps happening.
You have mentioned, though, some of these poems were written before, and it's also very important for you to write about the Gazan sunsets, the beaches, the fruit trees in your family's garden. As you said, you were born in the Al-Shati refugee camp. You later moved to the border town Beit Lahaya in northern Gaza. That was at the beginning of the second Intifada. And you've said that move is really what influenced you to become a poet, to write poetry.
Exactly.
Tell us why.
Well, I believe that when someone is born in a place and that is the only place which they know, it's difficult for them to see, to know the difference between things. So when I was born in the refugee camp, it was a very, very small place. People were just the same people that you see every day. The walls are the same walls that you see in the refugee camp. But then you move out and you see a different landscape. So Beit Lahiya is an agricultural city. It was the first time I saw some eggplants, some strawberry fields, some corns. So I started to see the difference, that the world is different than the refugee camp. And then when I left Gaza for the first time at the age 27, that was 2019, and it is shocking even, when I went out to America and I saw, children traveling with their parents and their grandparents or their grandparents traveling to see them. I mean, people are living, I'm not saying a good life, but at least, life that everyone accepts. They have the ability to move, travel,
They're free.
They are free, but why did not I practice my human life, my childhood even? Now we see children now in Gaza lining up to get some food or to get some water. Children who are 7 years old, like my children.
As the situation in Gaza remains dire, more than 40,000 people are estimated to be dead. I wanted to ask you, what comes after, and what message have you got for the world watching?
I think what the world should be doing is to listen to people from Palestine. Listen to people. Ask them, how are you? What are your hopes? What do you need as people, not even as Palestinians? But ask people what they need. Don't ask politicians or governments about what should be done to people in Palestine. How can we progress with peace, the peace process? Talk to the people.
What do they need?
What do they need? They need freedom. Anything. I've been in Paris for 4 days. I was in the States for some months, and I see people traveling from one city to another. They have airports, they have seaports, they have a good passport that allow them to travel to so many countries without any visas, without any delays. We don't have an airport in Gaza since 2000. The only airport that was in Gaza was bombed by Israel in 2000, and we don't have any seaport. I've never been able to sail in my own sea, the Mediterranean Sea, in my life, because Israel occupies the sea. And more than that, more shocking, is that I have never seen an airplane flying over Gaza. The only kind of planes that I saw were the F-16, the helicopters, the drones, the F-35. People need to live, a decent life. Something like anywhere in the world people have life. We need to live something like this.
Mosab, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show to share some of the witness accounts of what's been going on. Forest of Noise is the name of Mosab Abu Toha's latest book of poems. He'll be presenting his work at the Maison de la Poésie in Paris this week, and his tour and his mission to document what is happening inside Gaza continues. Thanks for joining us. More news coming up on France 24 after this.